Comment. Public comment all right, we've got one member of the public that would like to speak, but it's not on yet. So I can house up, assuming in the case of the minutes. Comments. So is there any board member comment? I'll make a comment. Yes, please. Okay, I took some notes. But I just wanted to bring up a couple of things today. First, I know that a few of my board members have received calls from a city council member. I have also heard recent conversations at the city council retreat. I know a lot of that is trickling down to us and our staff. On top of that, we've heard things said in DST meetings about YVHA staff. So I think it's important to just remind ourselves where the conversations really belong. First, under the IGA between the county, city council and county commissioners appointing board members to this board. It is this board, not city council, commissioners that evaluate our executive director. It's not executive director that evaluate our staff. There is a real serious conversation, and this is the appropriate place for those conversations to be happening among us at the table, not in city council meetings and not in county commission meetings. And not in site calls, certainly not in site calls. Incredibly inappropriate. I also want to say how proud I am of this board and the staff. The work that we are doing is hard, it's complicated, and it's often thankless, but it is deeply important. Every one of you has a really big commitment and mission to this community, and I don't want that to get lost when the outside noise gets really loud. Emily and I presented in Yampa last week. We're presenting an overview tonight about housing study. Those went great to this community. We're so happy to have us there. People are engaged, they're hopeful. And I also want to share that I've received lots of positive comments about the energy impact fund grant for YVHA BOD. Congratulations again, the county is stoked for that. I've also so many friends we're excited about Cottonwoods, great work there. John gave a really great presentation to the county and city this week on that. And so thank you for that. And I think those types of goals and milestones that we should be able to keep celebrating. So I want to close by saying, as a county commissioner, we have no intention of making board members. We're not having any of this conversation. Conversations about staff at this level, not us. And I'm proud of the work we're doing. I really value all of the staff, and thank you. And I'm proud of the work we're doing. Thank you. Board comment. Yes, I just want to make a quick clarification. That accidentally included my mentioned it as a young boy. I tried to apply it very graciously when I was at all of the organizations throughout that very long list. And I did preface it say all the women that I don't think on behalf of myself and the organization I'm belonging to. So the kind of good graciously, they did a wonderful job. Whether it on the online version and putting a print version when that's already. But I think the comment really I'm going to associate with the organization and it really would probably want to look program. I wouldn't clarify that with everyone that it was just don't think so good. I think that I for immediately counting on it. So you have a hard stop at 2 o'clock. So just efficient with your comments. Okay. Just because of the sound in the room, outside comments from when people online can't hear the actual conversation or side conversation they're having. I want to know that. I kind of want to know, in response to the comment made about leadership, council has heard a lot from the public. We tried to share what all needs heard moving forward. So when we've had conversations about that, it's been really, what are we going to do to respond to the public? So I think having a conversation at this level would help them understand where the and how we respond to others. Concerns about leadership. We understand as a council that that's not in our authority to determine the leadership of the staff, but we do have a responsibility to respond to the public, and I think we've seen a lot of improvement with our ability to partner with YVHA on our correspondence, comments, and correspondence. So grateful to see that progress. And if there is, to talk about leadership, that would be helpful for council to know and sort of tune in so they understand where the board is at. Each other comment. Yeah. We will close consent agenda. Oh. I'm thinking I do, but I and higher. It's not pace. I know. Signature for the minutes. Like, oh, that was what you said. All right. And also, there's some things because I'm switching to the template and see accessible template. So some of those things are regular from documents accessible the ADA requirement. And so there's a few things that the state also really allows them where public comment is going to have more in the draft, it's correct. It's just that some of these things are being translated to the deal, and it's you're just well, correct. I'm saying that sometimes it's just happen. All right. So subject to those changes to the ordinance, do I have any comments on consent agenda? With that, I'm going to yeah, I have a motion. Jill, the second. Any other comments? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Consent agenda passes. All right, staff, and I turn it over to Ellen.
Hey, and just so you know, his comments on like they gave here saying that that's a meeting more about just want to put on knowledge that people are fine, but there's something operational performance as well. This is much and from later in the that ranch and the deliberation and stewardship team. Our final DST W06. That is scheduled for 3:37. Some kind of agenda for the meeting. We still keep around like builders and civic canopy, but what I got last week all invited me to it's So, July meeting, trying to get a better understanding of into this final days, this, meetings, someone's around the place, and then deciding as a group whether we do these two, how we're range and balance the return. So forth. So, this last meeting, there was generated, shared city council on September 9th, and also based on this decision, I think you'll see saying for diet might be specific. Like night in here, I was related out to June and their properties. July, financial conference, received some phone calls and we also received a lot of tenant complaints as well. And so we brought that up to OVG, essentially asked for some clarification and what do they do to resolve these issues. Essentially, it's some of what we're hearing that's referred to all three properties. Landscape reserves, anchors, yeah, the vast dead trees that leads throughout the properties. Exhibits as last week, as I understand, they don't meet the shrine only had two. So, you're the San Antonio. And lack of salary, posted all the salaries, home calls not being answered. Staffing appointments of attendance that not showing up. So those are the ones. So the dog waste stations were maybe empty. And amenities not available to tenants during posted office hours, such as the gym, community rooms, things of that nature. So we've been going back and forth with OPG over the last couple of weeks about these items. They do have their asset manager in town, Erin. She arrived yesterday, is on site today and tomorrow. Following this meeting, we are myself, Abby, and Allison are having a meeting with her to kind of talk through this and what their plan is to address some of these issues. One of the updates that I got yesterday afternoon was that they had hired a third-party landscaping company and have a contract executed with them to take over maintenance landscaping for three properties. And looks like they're going to get started next week on essentially working through the outstanding items with weeds, getting the irrigation turned on, getting making some plans for replacing some of these dead trees that are so. It's one to look at. We also received additional emails this week from two kind of concerned citizens, if you know. We have responded to one of those tenants, and in the process of responding to the other one after this meeting this afternoon. I don't know. You're going to have a discussion with the board on this. And if there's any sort of direction or any other inputs that the board would like to share with OPG as part of this meeting today. I don't know if you can hear us or if you can chime in that. That's one of the kind of topics that we wanted to talk about today.
Hey, I'm in the car and I really can't chime in, but what you said sounds good so far, and I'm looking forward to the meeting.
Um, um, And so, excuse me, I just swallow something. Regarding the amenities, OPG submitted them to Chapman with the light technical. And also with their they submitted to the city council, they very clearly stated that the amenities such as the recreation outlet was 24/7. And it's in that email to Leo, we send the negative to you if you like, that. So this out, it's been 3 years. In my opinion, is unacceptable. So the community is during office hours, it's not being concerned about with. We need to, in my opinion, this is 2025. We can have access to doors. And it clearly said 24/7, so we see Aaron, to run that. We had asked for action on the profiles, you know.
Sure. Sure. Don't understand and Leah shared that email with me. It's about, I think that'll be a topic of conversation today. I think there's some other amenities at anglers that are available or lacking. So.
All right, thanks a lot. Thank you. I really appreciate all the team for working on it. The concerns that about the concerned citizens.
Condition that we're landscaping. At anglers specifically.
And we can look into what our options are. If we have to come to some reason, we'll continue.
We'll fix that.
Let them fix the audio.
Is anybody else in the room logged into the Zoom with their device? Let them unmute. Both your speaker and your microphone are muted?
Yeah.
I am, but I'm not connected to audio at all.
Okay.
I'm on, but muted and speaker and Zoom.
Speakers off. Okay. Shut off the room, which means we can't hear those folks just now. Sorry about this, folks.
Thank you for your help.
It looks like something changed behind the scenes with a software update, maybe. So maybe we will use this as our speaker now. Folks online, can you hear us? Is that better, Sandy? Okay, much better. Can one of you folks online please speak and we'll see if we can hear you on this end?
Ask somebody specific.
Sandy, can you say a few words?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
you
that's
got,
100% better. Thank you so much.
you bet. Thanks for your patience, folks.
Thank you, Greg.
I'd like to just add a couple, or one thing. One of the inquiries or complainers, concerned citizens was Kurt Weiss. I immediately talked to him and told him what we were doing as far as plan and having OPG on site. I did share that information with Gail, Gary, President of City Council today. And she said it would be helpful to have someone at council Tuesday night. So I haven't shared this with, Elliot's gonna be gone next week. So I thought I'll just go and do public comment. So the other responding person of concern was a neighbor. I'm guessing it was just down the road in one of the condos that are along the road.
This is specifically at Anglers?
This is at Anglers. So we are addressing those, and I think maybe next, even before you leave, we'll get a quick note update to the board, telling them about how our meeting went with the OPG. Yeah. Or I can't.
All right.
I had something that you thought to speak to them. I was getting out of this meeting with OPG today, requesting or letting them know that like up to $10,000 at each property, if we see something, we're gonna fix it, and then send them the bill, while they're in this interim position, so that we can contact our local resources for landscaping, for cleanup, for little maintenance things. But there's gotta be a threshold of dollar amount they're willing just to get a bill from us for, and we'll just outlay the cash, get the work done, and then send the bill. And I think we'd start with 10,000 per property.
What if they don't pay the bill?
Well, that's,
You have a signed contract, you would litigate it.
well, we don't have a signed contract, but I mean, we're working as a, part of the partner. We don't have recourse, so 10,000 is also a number that we can swallow. But our history with them leads me to suspect that they'd be willing to, in the interim, entertain something like that.
I wholly support and appreciate that comment, Cole, and even if we had to end up paying for it, I recognize it with, it's a trade-off with the YVHA property, that we lose some contractual ability to manage it. But I think that for that dollar amount, if they're not getting it done, we should get it done for our residents. So thank you, Cole, for that excellent suggestion.
Well, it sounds like you hired,
Yeah.
They got hired
finally.
a landscaping company for all three properties.
So we'll see, I mean, I can drive by that property twice a day at the minute.
Thank you, Mark. I think the other challenge is clean, because we have, I think that if they don't keep like always clean and things like that, we should hire someone to do it instead of, I think it's all
And
that.
they said they've got the landscaping, and there's the paneling on one of their storage doors in the back has been off since April. So
Is landscaping
hopefully there's
contract,
an improvement.
is landscaping contract at all three properties?
Yes.
While I appreciate this suggestion, I worry a little bit about the precedent it sets with them, that if they don't do it, we might just like pay for it and cover it. I wonder if there is like a stronger message you could send prior to paying for it and hoping they pay the bill.
Yeah, again, we're written out of these property management deals pretty specifically because they have no management. They're struggling just like any other business in town, and they're doing it from afar, so it's an interim step, and I'm not saying that would be our policy going forward, but if we needed to Band-Aid something or address something immediately, I think that's an avenue to do it. And like I said, our relationship with them is such with three properties and our history that they'd be open to problem solving. No, I understand setting the precedent.
And can we like offer any kind of house, like set aside one unit for staff housing, if that's like something that would help them acquire the appropriate staff?
That's,
They have that.
yeah, they have it, and we don't have the control of that.
Once again, Dakota, I think this is the reason I support this. This is, we've been working on trying to do what you're suggesting for 3 years.
Yeah,
And we're having the same conversation. I think it's time to prioritize this.
yeah, I agree.
The one thing about the staffing is, part of the sell in our conversations to OPG about Mission Rock was that they're based in Denver. They have a bench, they have people that, they can deploy to come up and kind of address issues, whatever. That hasn't happened. So I think that's gonna be another topic of conversation with them today, is like, that was what we were sold on, is that, they could easily triage these situations and send people up here to help with maintenance, help with cleaning, help with, appointments and manning the desks and things like that. And that's just simply not happening. And, whenever we, a lot of these kind of emails and conversations have not included Mission Rock. But when there was some recent emails where their staff were included, it just, it seems like it's excuse after excuse really on their end as to why these things are happening. So I'm just as frustrated as you guys are with it, so.
Yeah, I mean, if you could emphasize the reputation risk that we are incurring because of their actions.
Are there meeting minutes from the property and asset management team that Mission Rock and OPG is seeking some sort of a loan
Yeah,
And can't that loan be withheld?
We put that on hold.
Good.
yeah. Yeah, so that was something that they had approached us with before, Jason had, was out. And, one of the things we discussed in the property management team meeting was sending them a list of all these things that we had heard of since July, and basically saying, hey, if you want us to consider this contribution to English 400 for some of the construction overages, we need for you to take these issues seriously, address them, follow up with us on your actions, like what you're doing to address them. And then we'll bring kind of this request to the board and have a thorough discussion about, us providing any sort of, contribution or money. And so their response through these emails has been, I would say, less than, adequate, in my opinion. It's, I think kicking the can down the curb or down the road and just, again, making excuses for everything. Because the landscaping stuff has been going on for months now. And the irrigation hasn't been on at Anglers, since, since last year. And they just got it turned on this week, and then everything's dead, and, it's almost the end of summer, so.
And that is unacceptable to neighbors. But I agree with Lou. I think that particular items that they guaranteed if the narratives are like that, if there's any legal recourse we can do, this board member is past the point of being ready to take it to the next step if they don't do something. I appreciate OPG, they saved us with reserves financially and gave a lot of great, units to our community and help to our community. But, organizations with contractual obligations with have to follow those contractual obligations. And I think we need to do what we can, do any legal thing we could do on that. So I think that Lou's right. I'm glad they're up and I hope they get this done, but I agree with Cole. It's for under 10,000 property, let's do it ourselves, and for big items such as the, promising an amenity 3 years ago and it's still not up. What can we do legally?
I shared with them your frustration and wanting to take it to it.
There are a lot of levels I would like to take.
Elliot, will their asset manager evaluate local management skills?
I would assume so, but that's something I'll ask, yes. Yes.
When you're talking with OPG, bring up Sunlight Crossing, they had 20 cars parked along Sunlight Drive going up where I live. Outside of the parking lot, plenty of spots in the parking lot, but 20 cars parked along the road last night.
Jim, OPG does not, has owned or managed
Somewhat.
someone.
That's,
Well, whoever, I thought it was OPG, my bad.
No, that's okay.
Can I ask a somewhat ignorant question, but do you have any property management companies that are doing a great job at any property?
Ours, yeah,
Okay,
at Hillside,
at Hillside
Hillside and Fish Creek.
and Fish Creek, and then everybody else is doing is mediocre.
Average to not so hot.
Average, not so hot job. And the reason why you can't duplicate what they're doing at Hillside is what?
Primarily, the investor on LIHTC deals get to pick who they use, and they have to be approved. And I would say that the emphasis is on compliance so that the investor does not lose its tax benefits. So if you look at Mishawaka, they're a nationwide company. They have an office in Denver, but they're nationwide. And so Wells, so that's primarily the
So
reason.
if you went to the investors and gave them some rather negative reviews about this organization, would that affect their ability to be considered a primary vendor for LIHTC properties?
We tried to manage. You want to give a little history as you?
I don't want to get too deep.
Okay, yeah, I don't want, Steve, why don't you and I and Elliot have Alyssa have a conversation about options and history? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
All right.
okay. A few other operational things. So, In the board packet are our latest kind of pre-qualification numbers for Cottonwoods. We are looking kind of very strong as far as the number of people that have, gone through this process. We have had 209 people that have submitted a pre-qualification form. And, it looks like we are, is that right? All 209
180.
So,
180, it looks like are eligible.
correct.
So anyway, very kind of strong turnout and showing. In addition to kind of the pre-qualification form, Alyssa and Araceli have been working at the boathouse. Alyssa was at the boathouse this past weekend during the farmer's market. Araceli has been stationed up there on Tuesdays, engaging with people. I'd say the turnout has been kind of sparse, pretty light, but the few folks that have shown up are very interested in Cottonwood, so there's been some good engagement, some good questions being asked, and we'll continue to kind of do these meetings throughout the summer. And in addition to that, Alyssa did a presentation to the City Council and Routt County Commissioners on Monday, just a very high level thing about Cottonwoods, and I heard that was kind of well received. And then in addition, doing a presentation in Northwest Colorado, the Community Health Partnership coming up. So trying to get the message out there and trying to get more engagement with the public on what we have to offer at Cottonwood. So we'll continue to work through that over the summer and into the fall.
I saw that the prospects by household income, how does that equate to the AMI levels that we have available, since I know that some of the 40?
I would feel strong up to the 120. I'd say we're still missing the 130, 140 range. We did just get on the calendar confirmation today for 2 different presentations to UC Health.
Okay.
So we've got that upcoming. We get to Farmers Market again this week. We're presenting to the school district this evening. We've got Steamboat Mountain School next week. We've got a pretty action-packed presentation calendar going on. So I think as we do that, we'll see it slowly climb up higher, but I think until we actually publish sales prices, we're still going
Right, I agree. And I agree, the majority of these units are 130, is that right?
correct.
Two things on Cottonwoods, if I could, real quick. Our inspections continuing and this video being shot during construction. I think, Mark, you were doing some of that, is that correct?
Asking to have it done.
Okay.
And it's a company that comes in, and they have already done, there's a completely thorough video of it, and then ties that to the drawing, so you can look something up, and it'll show you on the drawing where it is.
So you're pleased with that?
I'm pleased with the process, I haven't seen the result, but I know the process.
Okay. The only other thing on Cottonwoods that I would suggest is, I think there is some talk about a delay, or is this gonna be successful or whatever. I don't think it would hurt to get posting material or send a press release out about the lightning strike and how far that has set us back and how much it has cost the process. Now, granted, it's all part of the insurance policy, but it did slow things down. So I would suggest getting that public word out in any way, shape, or form possible.
Just so let me comment, it's only slowed us down about 3 weeks.
But it still slowed us down, and it's cost.
But there may be other slowdowns.
I understand.
Right now, we're positioning that Cottonwood will be ready in 1Q,
First quarter.
first quarter 26, which gives us some.
Maybe that gives us enough wiggle room, I don't know.
They may be able to make up some space sometime.
Okay.
So if it continues to be an issue, Jim will send something out.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. And then a few property updates. So Mid Valley, as Jim mentioned, We did hear back from Houseman. We're looking at about a 3-week delay on building 1 with the lightning strike. Essentially, they've kind of pulled all their resources over, 2-week delay.
Building 2.
I'm sorry, building 2. But the delay is on building 1 for the delivery. They've had to pull all their kind of resources over to building 2 in order to, re-pull new electrical wire and make sure things are, looking good over there. The total was, right around, $500,000 for the lightning strike. That is being covered by the builder's risk policy. So we have a $10,000 deductible on that. And they're currently working through that. That was a topic of the OAC call today.
Can I ask about that? If lightning might persist there, if we need to do some kind of mitigation measures so that no future damage, or if we think this was like a one-off?
That's a
It's a
great
really tall
question.
building without like a lot of trees around it, so.
Yeah, I've had a conversation with, the owner of Central Electric about that. And he said his experience is that, sometimes lightning does strike twice. But it's very, he's seen, some buildings that got hit by lightning that have never gotten hit before, or again, I should say. And then others that have, been struck, again, after an initial lightning strike. There is a cost to that. And, I think kind of, where we're at with, the project right now, that's maybe a bit there, but that's something I can ask about again and see if there's a rough order of magnitude of what that expense would be.
I appreciate you talking to them about it.
I would be surprised if there's not lightning suppression in the design.
I don't think there is. No, talking to them.
And there's no lightning system. Yeah, I don't know what the cost would be. It could be discussed.
Right.
And that's not guaranteed either, but it's.
You were the conversation.
So activities that are still in progress are site work, grading. There's prep going on for the carports, trash enclosures. As you've seen, they're getting some exterior siding up on building 2 facing Mount Warner Road. Highway 40 and Mount Warner Road exit. They're in the process of wrapping up all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, rough end. Insulation is in progress right now, as well as getting all the tubs and showers set. On a separate note, I had a walk through there yesterday with Steamboat Asset Management, who's going to be doing all the HOA management for us, with their maintenance guys and some of their kind of higher ups on the operation. They were very impressed with the building. They really walked away with it was a very positive kind of 2 hours I spent with them walking through the building. So they're excited about this asset, bringing it into their portfolio and managing it for us. So that was a very, I would say, positive interaction I had with them. On Hillside Village, we are working through our capital needs assessment process. So just received that back from our architect last week. I know we're kind of looking at updating it with some steamboat pricing to cost and what that looks like. In addition, the Gill Group was on site on July 30th doing an appraisal. So those are kind of 2 very kind of critical items that are needed in order to move this recapitalization process forward. Looks like we'll be getting the appraisal back here sometime in early September. And then the team will continue to kind of work through that process with Enterprise. And then finally, Whitehaven, I think you guys saw this, but we received another $750,000 for the water and infrastructure project. We are looking at a couple other grant opportunities and some loan opportunities to close that funding gap for that project. We've also received an administrative approval back from the city of Steamboat Springs, and are just looking for some comments back on our construction documents. And so based on the timing, you know, we're looking to put this back out to bid in January of 2026. And so I'll continue to kind of keep the board updated as we make progress on funding and dates and things like that, as we move back and forth.
Do you mind just telling us a little bit more about the property manager you're picking for Midvale?
Yeah, so it's Resort Group, Steamboat Asset Management, and very, you know, well-respected, I'd say, property management team in town. I'm not sure how many units and HOAs they have under management, but they're probably the largest one in town. So it's been a really kind of positive process through the RFP conversations and interactions with them.
And is that a done deal or are they?
Yeah, it is a done deal.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and then just finally, I'd like to say, this is in my report, but I just want to say thanks to everybody over this last couple months with Jason being out, everyone's support from the board level as well as the staff level. So I know he's back next week, but I just want to say thank you for everyone's help. So
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's it. Unless anybody has any questions for me.
Any other questions on staff reports?
There's a question that's not in there, but tomorrow in this building, I think the regional housing group is getting together. We've been helping them with information or any kind of the housing reports they can.
Yeah, so we're scheduled to attend that. Tim Wolden and I reached out, and Alyssa, Emily, and myself will be attending that on behalf of the housing.
Good time.
Good reminder to send him the
The
study.
housing study?
Yep.
Excellent.
We'll do it right now.
Yeah, it's like good timing.
So what organization is
He's looking at the housing study. This is a, well, Tim and I are putting together this, understanding what value there might be in having a regional housing partnership based on the fact of starting with the largest employers who have the biggest workforces and having an initial meeting with that group of people as well as with other concerned organizations and see if we can determine if there's value and benefit of trying to look at things collaboratively to leverage the size and the scope and the potential resources available for workforce housing. So there'll be, Altera will be there, school district will be there, housing authority will be there, UC Health will be there, and some other, there's about 20 people who are going to be there. So it's just the initial meeting to determine if there's value there, because there's a number of infill properties in town that if there was interest from a group of different organizations to utilize pieces of that, may be a way to create a bigger whole than it is, or a bigger resource pool than we could do separately.
So is it Craig Housing Authority and South Rock Housing Authority invited or?
Not initially. This is just initially with some, it's really around some of the biggest employers in the area, and then it's going to branch out from there. This is just an initial one with those. We have some identified big workforce housing needs.
It's not a regional, it's more.
No, I wouldn't call it regional this way, but I think our vision longer term is more of a nationality.
I will say, since you brought this up at the chamber board meeting we were at today, and that was the first time I heard of it, so the county has not been invited to participate as of yet.
I find it interesting that UC Health, I mean, haven't they in some ways at least started to address their employee housing situation?
UC Health was there today at the chamber meeting, and they sold out Creek's End immediately. And I think they said something like it took care of somewhere between 30 and 40% of their housing. They still have a large housing.
Because one of the largest regional employers is actually the county.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't, the county is not excluded, I'd have to talk to Tim at the list, but, well, went out, but I thought there was some,
Yeah, unless he invited someone from planning, no one from the
But I'll double check that. with you, see if you personally.
I'm not on there.
So this is for employer housing, it's not for regional housing, because the regional housing is something that's needed for Prop 123.
It's more of a housing partnership among, say, larger employers right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it could evolve in different ways. But this is, as I said, a very initial meeting to see if there's value. People can find value in it.
And some of the feedback that we heard from council is that some of these groups weren't at the table for the round range discussions, and maybe they would have had more support or would have bought in more if they felt like they could provide some skin in the game and actually see what that opportunity could do for their needs. So, you know, as we understand that it would help the community as a whole, but, you know, could they have offered funding support or other, you know, means?
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. Super supportive of this idea. But the county and the airport are two of the largest employers. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, so I think it's a great idea too, it just wasn't clear, this doesn't sound like regional, it sounds more like.
No, not initially, but, yes.
It's in this housing strategies, strategic plan to develop a regional housing plan, or I forget exactly the terminology, but I think like Steve said, you know, council doesn't really have the capacity or the funding to go about this right now, so Steve has kind of offered to support this in the interim until it can be moved up our list of housing strategy priorities. So, thank
But I will
you.
double check on the county piece of it and who was, if anyone invited on that list.
Thank you.
I'll let you know.
All right.
And then, I'm sorry, one other thing is, in the packet are emails that we've received from, constituents and folks in the community, about YVHA. And so, you know, this, I think, was one of the suggestions from Bill Pass, was just kind of looping the board in on how we're responding, the types of emails we're receiving. So we're gonna start including those in the packet moving forward, so the whole board can kind of see what we're getting and how we're responding to those emails.
Very helpful.
Excellent. Great. All right, any other questions of staff? Yes.
In lieu of a board challenge this month, I'll be sending out talking points to all of the board and the staff focused on three kind of salient topics. One being the Brown Ranch project, a little bit of history on it and what is anticipated over the next roughly month. Much of that's drawn from the presentation that you'll see later. The second is just a very fact-based outline of the accomplishments that YVHA has made over the past 10 plus years, as well as things that are moving forward. And then last but not least is kind of reissuing the talking points around the the extended leave policy. And also noting, there are 4 employees at YVHA who are qualified. Obviously, one of them has taken advantage of it. So the expectation is not that you memorize that verbatim, but hopefully it provides you information that you can incorporate into your own words as you're speaking to your circle of influence, members of the public, what have you. And then the other one that we're still working on is there are a few open items from the housing study, follow-up items. Once those are complete, we'll issue those as a separate set of talking points. So.
Leah, did you have?
I just wanted to apologize for being late. I'm sorry. I was driving my husband back from the back doctor and there was an injury accident on I-70.
Oh my.
So,
Well, we're glad you're here.
I'm looking forward to our meeting today with OPG, and I just wanted to say it was very hard to hear that part of the call. So I didn't feel like I could weigh in, but I understand all of the board's frustration with this process, and I promise you that I'm very frustrated also. I'm just trying to figure out how we can hopefully achieve the balance of getting the things that we want accomplished at the property without torching the relationship that we have with our partner.
I talked to you
maybe a week ago or a few days ago, I'm not sure when.
Yeah.
And you understand the tax credit financing really well. I don't, and I wanted to take the next step, because it's been 3 years. OPG is, they're miserable at management. And I wanted to take the next step and go to whoever controls OPG and complain, and make a point that a change needs to be made. And you said that me, us don't want to go down that road, because if we impacted that could impact the financing arrangement, and then we get in serious trouble. So
Well,
what
I mean, what I
I'd like to do
said.
is not put words in your mouth, if you could speak to that
Sure.
for just a little bit.
Yeah, so what I was saying is, I'm hoping that we can have a meeting and talk about the real concerns that we have about the lack of amenities that are being provided on these sites, and let them know that our board is tired of hearing their excuses, and that we want to move forward and understand a plan with specific timeframes around when they're gonna address these long-standing issues. They have made some, albeit slow process, like moving forward, and they are working to address our concerns, albeit way too slowly. And there's like 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, I feel like. So I think we owe them one more pass at, hey, we're getting ready to call YVHA. Like, this is a big issue, because if YVHA comes and finds them non-compliant, then those amenity spaces will be removed from the tax credit basis, or I know this better in California, because that's where I did more of my deals, but they'll either be put on notice from YVHA to do something, or it's possible that they'll try to just recapture the credits for that part of the project, and that is a significant financial impact. So while we've been telling them that we want them to improve the management and maintenance and all of that around the sites, like, we haven't said to them, you're not in compliance on these amenity spaces. Catherine brought that great email to our attention about how they had promised that in the YVHA application, and apparently YVHA hasn't noticed that at any of their property walks. So I think we owe it to our partner to say something to them into their face before we call someone behind their back. And then I think as a board, after we have that conversation, we should decide how we want to proceed about notifying the allocating agency.
Yeah.
Because if their credits get recaptured, we're putting their project, and we're basically taking a financing source out of their project, a significant one. I don't know how much that amenity space is in terms of the basis, but they have not taken care of the properties the way that we would like. But what I did tell you is that our standards as a community at YVHA are higher than the industry, and I don't think we should back away from that. We should just be aware that our standards are higher and understand that our partners may be working towards meeting our standards, but their standards are lower. I mean, you walk with OPG and they see things on the property and we point them out, and they don't see what we see as a problem. So they will see the landscaping that's dead at Anglers as a problem, I'm absolutely sure, but the standards that we have as a community and at YVHA are higher than what's in the industry, and I think we're working on pushing our partners to get to where we want to go.
I mean, I'll just add, I'm a big believer in protecting the health, safety, and welfare of our residents. I think we have an obligation. And in our conversation, Leah made great points about the impacts and the problem in selling those impacts to someone like YVHA. So making them understand that our next step is going to be more serious, I think is important.
Yeah.
Because I do believe there are health, safety, and welfare issues.
Well, if you know of something before our meeting, we'd like to have the list.
Well, honestly, I think someone mentioned that.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
Yeah,
If there's anything
I'll do the
other
check.
over and above, okay,
The list that the property management team is put
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
all right. Okay, next up, we're moving to action item. Board expectation and conflict of interest form. We have those? There has been a suggestion to make one word change on the board expectation. And so if, and that's why I was calling you, Sarah. If you want to pass them out, and that way, let me point out the change. I know if you already passed the, signed the conflict,
The change is not to the conflict of interest.
no, it is not. The changes to, the opening paragraph on the board expectation. And there's a word in there that Catherine has suggested that it would be a little more appropriate to change the word from obedience to support. And we all know Catherine is a cat person, not a dog person.
Kathy and my dog obey
So, if, unless there, I have had no other comments, and if anyone has any further comment, thank you very much, Jess and Leah, for working on, updating the board expectations. You already signed it?
Yeah, I already signed it.
Okay.
Sarah, I think I signed that. Yeah. I think I signed
I
that.
put in support, initially.
Okay, thank you, Lou. That's what I wanted you to do.
Well, it doesn't, well, we don't sign the board expectations, we just sign the conflict. But if-
No, you signed
No,
that.
you signed both.
Wait a minute, I just have the,
Yeah, you
There's
just
two
have
pages.
one. You just one thing.
I just have one page.
Yeah, we're making changes.
Sarah didn't print the other one.
Oh, you didn't just.
Got it already?
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then we
Got it.
next, next
You signed it
meeting,
twice.
let's go ahead and execute that and pass it around. Okay? All right. Next item, Brown Ranch DST update. Now, we're listed for 15 minutes, I'm sorry, wait, the finance, near and dear to my heart. Paul, do you want to take it, or is Sandy, or is it a joint update?
Sandy's traveling and asked me to do this. However, she provided really great information in here, starting on page, scrolling to it.
I just stick to the Brown Ridge Community Solutions in my packet.
58.
10. Okay, a lot going on here. We're on action item 7, mid-year financial review.
Wait,
Is that right for the agenda?
DST is next. Oh, no.
So
No,
right
mid-year
about
financial review is next.
Mid-year financial
review
review.
is next.
Right.
It is, but in the packet, the Brown Ranch.
No, well,
It's just out of order.
we're gonna be reviewing the financials that are in the consent agenda. Or I'm commenting on them, I'll keep them short. So if you go to page 10, you'll see Sandy's breakdown of the June 2025 financial notes. Basically summarizing the budget analysis, since we are 50% of the way through the year. You should be seeing on the revenue side about 50% of the budget being done. There are some timing issues and some one-off items that she has further explained in pages down there that we'll get to. Page 11 has a good breakout of budget expenditures to actual, with some notes, some helpful notes there. I'm not gonna sit and read them at you, but we, as a finance team, have gotten together and gone through these and fully understand them and don't believe that anything here is of concern of missing budget or going over budget substantially. There's always a chance of having a supplemental budget at the end of the year, meaning expenditures exceeded the budgeted amounts. But at this time, we don't see any coming toward us. Property accounts receivable, the tracking of the amount of accounts receivable we have on page 12, as well as the vacancy loss compared to prior year. You can see that we are a little bit in a better position this year, which is all good news. Just a comment on the balance sheet and income statement presentation that you see every month. A reminder that we are giving you a consolidated look on the balance sheet and P&L statements. This is a combining of all governmental and business type funds. Not necessarily normal for government or nonprofit work, or specifically governmental, because you want to keep those funds separate. But I find it very helpful at a very high level to look at the organization at a consolidated level. So that's what you're seeing on page 13 is the consolidated balance sheet. A healthy cash position sitting on about 3.3 million in College Trust. That's our true liquidity position that is fully secured by a repurchase of treasuries overnight with Colorado Trust. We don't have to worry about FDIC insurance or anything like that because they are tied up with treasuries at the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, whatever that means to you individually. The organization as a whole is $44.5 million. That is obviously increased significantly by the $25 million land carry cost of Brown Ranch and other properties. But it's always good to know that we're sitting on about $44.5 million in assets. The page is starting on 16 to get into the details as much as we as the finance team want to give the board. Is a breakout of the governmental entities and the business type entities of that consolidated report. So the governmental entities first, those are your general operating funds that any government will have. In our case, we have our general fund, our development fund, where our tax dollars are going into, the Brown Ranch, which is its own fund now, even though we are not actively developing it, and the down payment assistance, or DPA, as those use public funds to service a public program. So we keep those separate from the business type entities, which are starting on page 18. 19. Our business type entities are fund entities. Enterprise entities are the properties that we control. So this is a point of confusion within the general public, if not on the board a little bit. We see Hillside, Fish Creek, and Whitehaven on here. These are the properties that we own, control, and manage. All the other properties are not on our balance sheet and are not in our financial statements. We are partners in those in some fashion, either as a lender or an equity investor or both. And those are held in the development fund aspect of the balance sheet. So you are not going to see Alpenglow on here. You're not going to see the reserves or anglers on here. Hillside, Fish Creek, and Whitehaven are our business type entities. We collect revenue through rents and other sources, and then we have expenditures for maintaining the property. So you see the full breakout of assets and P&L for those functions. That encompasses our entire organization from those governmental entities and those business type entities. So that consolidated balance sheet of $40.5 million is broken down into these 7 funds. The P&Ls are then are done accordingly. You start with a high level consolidated look on page 21. Again, taking into account all of the funds as one entity. Again, not the proper look as any CPA will tell you, but we're doing it for ease of review. If you go down to page 22, total income year to date is about $3.5 million. Current year budget is 17. That is taking into account grants and other things that are considered income or revenue that have not come to fruition or may not. So we're about 23% of our ratio, 23% of our budget halfway through the year. And again, there's some notes further down that we can get into on those. Scrolling down a little bit further, total non-operating expense, or total operating expenses, excuse me, on page 24. We're at $2.1 million on a budget of $14 million. Again, as those grants come in as revenue, and we spend those grants on what they're meant for, it's an expense, and it's a wash basically on the P&L However, we are still awaiting those funds to come in and to deploy those. So what we have spent year to date is 18% of the budget. So we've raised 23% of revenue and spent 18% of our expenditure budget. Again, finance team went through this in detail. Nothing of concern right now, timing issues, and all that fun stuff. And then the subsequent pages, again, break out the governmental activities versus the business type activities for those funds. Cash flow statement on page 29. These are complex, even for people in finance. However, it is truly just trying to wipe out anything that's on an accrual basis or anything like that and show just the cash position of the entity. You can see that we started on the far right column on page 29, start of the year, beginning cash, a little bit there, halfway through the page. We started cash this year, beginning January 1st at 4.2 million. Our ending cash at the end of June is 4.6 million. That's attributable mostly to the raising of our taxes, the collection of those taxes, and then expenditures for the various business entities and governmental entities that you see in the financials above. I'm going to pause there for any kind of questions on the presentation of financials and financials themselves. Yes, sir.
I have a few questions.
Okay.
Okay. So there was a returned $3 million grant for phase 2 of Mid-Valley. Was that state, federal, or that wasn't the STR grant?
It is not the STR funds.
It was a state division of housing grant that was specifically tied to the concept of developing building 3 as ownership condominiums. And so that was the grant where we notified the state of Colorado that we were going to be working with the city to reallocate the $5 million STR grant, which was also for that purpose and served as the cash match for that grant. So we're reallocating the $5 million STR grant to phase 1. Therefore, we lost the cash match that was tied to the $3 million state grant.
And I mean, I might add, and maybe I'm wrong, but we haven't decided whether or not building number 3 is going to be a for sale or a rental property at this point in time. The demand study tells us it probably should be a rental property.
Okay, that's helpful and kind of unfortunate, but good to know.
I'll just note that the state expressed, they were really appreciative that we were really proactive about letting them know that, you know, there was at the very least a delay in breaking ground, because we had initially talked about breaking ground on building 3 this summer. So that's what we had indicated in the state grant. So they were appreciative that we let them know so that they could deploy that money for other projects that were more shovel ready than ours, and made it clear that if we were ready to go back in a future round, that we'd be able to do that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for your work on that.
Sure.
What kind of Mid-Valley legal issues are we anticipating? Is this with, I saw there was like a note, my page 24, I think my page numbers are.
Yeah, you're getting into the green, the items of the green. Yeah, we'll go through those items, but the changing of the operating agreement, or the amending the operating agreement involves lawyers charging us by the word. So George Jack is not here to defend himself. So but these are unforeseen agreement issues that are necessary and part of development to a certain extent. And we put those items in there to try to capture that.
So it's just in relation to that, not necessarily to like fund a lawsuit if they're not, you know, if we need to back up the contract for the, I don't know.
No.
Nearly enough money in there.
No decision's been made on that, and this is just purely from amending the current agreement and continuing it.
And part of that is bringing in the city STR money, requires us to amend the operating agreement with Lone Tree and how that money is utilized. So that's kind of what that is.
And the positive phase 2 and all that. We had an interim agreement out there that has since expired, as we've talked about. So we'll
Which
just,
we'll talk about that more.
Yeah.
Okay.
so yeah, that's all that is.
Last question, any foreseen budget constraints due to state federal funding cuts, or is it too soon to tell if that will impact you all?
We don't have any dedicated revenue sources from the state. There was the grant that Emily just touched on. I mean, those budget cuts are for future expenditures, not anything that's already been awarded. So no, I mean, might be speaking out of turn, but I don't believe we have any revenue at risk.
Thank you.
Not in this year's budget.
Not in the, yeah, I was gonna say, you're not gonna feel the impacts of those cuts until your 2026 late or 2027 budgets.
And there will be, it'll be tighter on grant opportunities unless it's dedicated funds that come through.
Yes.
I don't know if it's the right time to ask the question.
Sure.
Anyways, looking forward, are we looking at a strategy for dealing with the mill levy not passing? Or one mill levy not passing? And what actions we would need to take early to make sure that we're okay?
Yeah, I think various committees have been talking about that individually, and that is on the strategic plan to discuss more openly as a board. But the finance committee doesn't have a recommendation or anything like that at this time.
I'll add a comment to that. Elliot did a great job presenting to the Board of County Commissioners this Tuesday, or we heard from our outside entities, the initial budget presentation. It's quick and dirty, just a high level, what are you requesting, why are you requesting X, Y, Z. We did also receive a request from the South Route Housing Authority for $50,000 as well. We also have the Hayden Housing Authority starting. Just lots of conversations about how the county will fund 3 separate housing authorities and what those requests look like. This housing authority is the only one with a dedicated funding source. The other 2 do not have dedicated funding sources. And so I think sooner than later would be good to have these types of conversations about a mill levy, what those types of requests look like. There was no conversation about not funding the housing authority request for 2026. Unless something drastically changes. There was conversation about, Dan, our finance manager, did bring up that when the mill levy was passed, the goal was to stop contributing $50,000 a year to the housing authority. That never happened, which I'm glad that never happened, right? But like, that was the goal for past commissioners, was like, oh, we're gonna get this passed. And we used to give over $80,000 to the housing authority, and then eventually that was scaled back down to 50 because of the mill levy. So lots of historical conversations just being talked about. We do match what the city of Steamboat Springs provides, so we're equal contributors. And I just think as we continue to see requests from the other 2 housing authorities, we do need to just look at what the county is providing housing across the county. So just something to be aware of as well.
Good context.
Any other questions? All right. Then we will move on, and I'm looking at the time, and we've got 45 minutes left, and we have the Brown Ranch DST discussion and an executive session and discussion on conduit. So we're gonna do an abbreviated version of Brown Ranch, kind of where we're at right now. And then move into, and then I would like to update the board in executive session on conduit. So Emily, do you want to start?
Wait, Elliot's.
Oh, Elliot's gonna start.
So yeah, in your packet, with the help of Emily and John, we've put together kind of a presentation of Brown Ranch, all the work that's gone into the DST and all the community engagement since April. I don't know if you had a chance to review that, but there's a lot of great information in here. I think provides a really good kind of high level summary of kind of where we're at and kind of where we're headed here over the next month or 2. I just, a couple things, reminders. So the DST is a group of 40 people that was selected out of 81 applicants. The intent of this group was essentially to provide a balanced variety of perspectives on Brown Ranch. So people that support it, people that were opposed to it, and people that were kind of on the fence about Brown Ranch. The meetings have started since April, essentially about 3.5 hours per meeting. Our last phase 1 meeting is scheduled for here in about a week and a half on August 26th. In addition to the kind of scheduled DST meetings, we've also had 3 inquiry team meetings. Those have been related to soils and site developability at Brown Ranch, identifying like what the housing need is, and then how we would potentially fund or source financial monies and subsidy for this project. I think what's not well understood is that that this group is kind of seeing them as being a yes or no vote on Brown Ranch. And I know I've tried to seek some clarity on that. I have a monthly meeting with Tom Leeson. So I brought that up with him a couple weeks ago. We also, as I mentioned earlier, sat in on this project team meeting that Emily invited me to. It seems like, you know, that's a topic of conversation as well within that group, and kind of what this final meeting means and what are the outcomes of it. And it seems like there's still like some questions around that as well. But based on this last meeting, there is kind of a report that's going to be generated that essentially, as I mentioned also earlier, is going to be shared with City Council on September 9th. And basically is going to kind of recap exactly what all the DST meetings, the outcomes have been, what this kind of final outcome, if you will, of the August 26th meeting, and what that means, and what it means to move forward to phase 2, which is more of a technical analysis, if you will, of the site and the recommendations from the DST from phase 1. Let's see what else we have for you here. I know some of the outstanding questions that I heard are, you know, are us and the city aligned on what it means for Brown Ranch and any sort of decision that's made. I think that's something that should be talked about, and there needs to be more discussion around that. Is this vote a go or no go for Brown Ranch? What are the kind of questions that the consultant's going to be asking? And so I don't have a lot of clarity on that to share with you today, but that's basically kind of where I've been able to kind of figure out where this process is at up to this point. So I don't know if you want me to continue on anything else you want to share, but sorry, I do have a few more minutes. So we do also have a communications revamp that will also be shared. There's going to be a major refresh of the Engage Steamboat platform and the website. And then it looks like the phase 1 kind of will some sort of shared understanding or agreement on what the path forward for Brown Ranch is for phase 1. And the big thing here is essentially taking kind of this divergent path that has been talked about by community builders and Civic Canopy, and trying to focus their efforts on, you know, what does it look like for a potential solution at Brown Ranch? How big is it? How many units would be included in that? And the expectation is that there would be some sort of, you know, deliverable there that translates and moves over into phase 2 that has more information related to land planning, how annexation agreement would work, the design and programming of the housing, better understanding of the financing and cost of the project, both horizontal and vertical development. And then is there kind of a comfortable balance, if you will, on the scale of pace, the number of units where I looking to build, and the infrastructure that's required to support that. So I guess high level, those are kind of a few things that we're looking at, or that's a recap of what's been happening with this first phase of Brown Ranch.
Thank you, Kathy, I'll be quick, I promise. First of all, thank you, John, and everyone for putting this together. It was excellent, and as always, I was glad I planned to be in my spin bike when I read it. It really helps me get my heart rate up, so. But a few quick comments. I was not able to attend listen to the finance meeting, but as a friendly suggestion to the team is that when they're presenting finance options or any options, I think it's important to present both the pros and the cons. I think like for the LIHTC, for example, if you leverage tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, but you can't manage it. And I think when they're discussing the metro district, Kathy assured me, and she listened to us, so I understand, I'm sure that's correct. It wasn't just a promotional show for metro districts, but I think it would have been important for them to also mention the negative aspects of metro districts, that it does push the cost to the residents. It is a real strong mechanism for the developers and consultants to make a lot of money. And also particularly in our community where council has said publicly they want to pursue a property tax by having separate levels of town, having separate property taxes, such as Sunlight Metro District, for example, is a metro district, Sunlight houses. I have a house that I own, down up on Fish Creek. They pay twice as much property tax with including the metro district as I do. Every time we do a metro district, it's gonna make it exponentially harder if we ever wanna do a property tax. So I think it needs to be broader. And then also, I do think we need to have a board member at that meeting. I thank everyone who's gone, before. And I'd like to also ask a question. I heard at the last meeting, there was, and it's good to hear concerns in the community about our board and anything else. But if someone says something inaccurate, such as the soils report, do we have an opportunity to say, hey, friendly fact check, or can the consultant do that? Or do we just sit there and, have, darts thrown at us without comment? So that's a question for the consultants. I think it's important to hear community concerns, but I also think that if we're there, it's important for us to share our voice.
Can I comment on that? Because I was at the last DSD meeting. And you were there,
Mm-hmm.
Emily was there, I don't know who else was there, John was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue that the first half of that meeting, the word I used to describe it was somewhat brutal in terms of some people's attack on the leadership and the housing authority. You can correct me if I'm wrong, if you don't feel that the first part of that meeting, or up to about the first 2 hours of it, close to it, was that. And then it was, we couldn't get past that to, okay, let's talk about some options. What can we do out there? Different things we can do. And the facilitator, is it Bob or Bill Fulton, I believe it was, said, let's just assume we don't have any leadership issue. Let's don't assume we don't have any trust issue. And let's go on. Because we can handle that. That's not difficult to do. We can take care of that. Or paraphrase, but those were the words. So we moved on. Okay, but that was a really big piece of the discussion at that meeting. So we moved on, and Clark said to me, well, I was just sitting in the back watching all this. He said, why don't you get in some of the groups as they come up with ideas? So I picked a group, and I won't say who, but I went in there with one of the most, what I would call anti-Brown Ranch, anti-housing authority, anti-Jason kind of perspective, if you will. And I said to that person as we were sitting there, and again, I kind of have this in the back of my head, we could annex a couple acres at Brown Ranch. We could build 100 or 200 units at Brown Ranch. We could start something at Brown Ranch. We may even tie it into the Glen over there and use their infrastructure, utilities, and power, and all this. And she turned to me, or he, I'm not going to say which one, and said, we can really do that? And I said, well, I'm not 100% certain, but I think it's worth exploring. She said, I'm in, after being vehemently opposed. So I share those two things for you only because I like the ending of that meeting, but I think the beginning and middle part was quite the opposite. The third thing I wanted to reference really quickly that ties in with this is when we have a mid-year retreat, which we did last month, and we talk about the emails, and we talk about what we hear at the farmers market, and we talk about other things that concerns the community, and the leadership of the housing authority comes up. And we talk about it, you know, for every one compliment, you get 10 negatives, right? It's just the way society is. But we talk about it, and I can't speak to how individual counselors take that information and move that out of that room. But we talk about it in the sense that we have to figure out how we interact with the housing authority and the county and everybody else to move this forward. And I just want to say, and my wife would say I don't have a high emotional intelligence, okay? So I could be totally off base here, but I sense a certain level of tension between the city council, between the county, and between the housing authority. And I think that if we're going to move this forward, we can't have that. This is not going to work if we're not collaborating and we're not trusting and we're not communicating at a very high level. So I just throw that out there because as I look at things, moving forward, whatever happens in August, and we move on to a phase 2, we got to all be in line here, and we got to be working as a team here. So that's all I have to say.
So we are gonna have another BRAC.
Another what?
BRAC,
We are.
Brown Ridge annexation.
Well, certainly not one that works out right.
Well, Steve, I think the housing authority board was very hard to collaborate with city council and follow city council's direction through this entire process. But I'll just say this as a board member that I find it challenging when that I see our board working very hard to collaborate and support city council processes in housing, and you hear city council, throwing out concerns, not to the board that we work collaboratively together to solve them and work, but just doing it, like Angelica said, in arenas that are not part of what I would say the professional collaborative.
Well, I can't speak for individual actions by people. I just think though that we have to get together and say, okay, this is how we are going to act. These are our behaviors. These are our principles, and we need to stay consistent with those.
I hope you guys do that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm talking about all of us.
I would agree with Steve in terms of, I believe we need a cohesive, collaborative strategy that is focused on what the public is looking at and how we're going to move forward in whatever way the DST determines. Based on what I saw in the presentation, it was up there for a minute. I believe it said 83% of those surveys said ground ranch was part of the solution. I think that's what it said. Yeah. Which sounds like a pretty big number to me. Recognizing 17% don't want to do that at all.
Recognizing also that it was prefaced with, don't worry about the leadership of the housing authority, don't worry about the trust issues, however you feel about that.
And those are the issues that I think we need a cohesive, collaborative strategy.
We do. And I don't want to talk about the past and about RAC and all that. I mean, Dakota probably can because she was there and I wasn't. But I don't think we're looking at repeating failures of the past.
I would hope not.
Do you have a proposal for how we can work to create this collaborative structure that you're speaking of? Because I can tell you that every board member that I've spoken to in this room is interested in trying to collaborate effectively with city council and county commissioners. And I will say that I think I have done my best during the time that I chaired this board to try to increase that collaboration. And I'm not entirely sure how we move forward. And, we were directed at the beginning of this collaborative process with our new consultant to stay in the back and let the community lead. And I think that the Housing Authority Board has done a great job at doing that. We've let the community lead. And now we're getting to the end of a process and no one really knows what the answer means. And I mean, I would like to put it to council, like, how do you want us to work with you? Because we all want to build housing, and I completely agree that we absolutely are not going to be able to unless we're working effectively together. But it's very hard to work effectively with a 7-member organization that have very different opinions and speak them individually and don't ever come directly to speak with us. You and Dakota are the exception. And other council members who do call personally, like Gail, thank you for doing that, and speaking with me. But I think what you're saying is a goal, and I'm just wondering, when are we gonna set up a process or a meeting? How can we sit down and begin these discussions?
Yeah, and it becomes more complex when we can have anywhere between 1 and 4 new council members in another 3 months.
Yeah.
It, as I've taken liberty of developing an outline of those critical issues that I think we do have common ground with the city council on. And that's something we will talk about separately in terms, but there are some very specific issues, 3 or 4, that come to mind immediately that need to be addressed in some form or fashion. And they're pretty much the ones you.
Well, I just don't want to ignore them or leave them.
Exactly, I agree.
Because they're not gonna just go away on their own.
I agree wholeheartedly. But I think doing that in a smaller venue than this board meeting and coming back to a board. Now, how we do that, do we meet as a group, a small group, a subgroup, talk through those issues and see where we find common ground? That's the only way to do that, is to talk.
Are you talking about the board or are you talking about Brown Ranch?
Were you talking about a combination?
I think it's a combination. I think it's a
County and the
combination.
city?
I think if,
I'm concerned if we start going down this road again,
Yeah.
we're gonna spend easily the next half hour.
oh, no, I'm not.
So I wanna say,
That's my-
I wanna keep it on Brown Ranch.
Okay, on Brown Ranch specifically, some of the criticisms are, if you don't change certain things, then I can't support Brown Ranch. That's a common theme that runs out in the wilderness of Steamboat Springs. I don't think we want to get into that conversation here at all. I think we have to have a conversation, with some other members, and then talk about how to get together with the city and walk through some of those issues. Because I think there'll be some strong feelings on all sides of the spectrum.
Go ahead, let me finish your thought.
Okay, I couldn't tell you, how does that happen? I don't think you can have seven council people and 7.
Can I make a recommendation
Yes.
on that point?
Okay,
Because that's speaking to what I wanted to share. I would like to suggest, council will have the report from the community builders September 9th. So maybe after we have that presentation, I would like Steve and I sit on the housing subcommittee within the city, it's city staff and us too. And maybe we can invite the executive team or whoever you want maybe to attend, and Steve can speak to this as well. And we can sit down after that report has been presented to council. I don't know if it will be presented to this board as well, but just kind of discuss the findings of that report and what we think is best moving forward.
as long as it touches on those major issues that seem to be bones of contention.
For sure, and that should be in the report, right? Those should
I don't
be
know.
key findings, because this was a community-led report driven to help understand those concerns and see what potential pathways we can find to move forward.
I have no problem.
And the joint meeting we had together, remember, we all committed to work together to make this process successful. And the Housing Authority has, we followed City Council's direction, we've supported them on it, and I do think we need to follow this process through with a focus to build on, to build houses. But don't forget, I think the board has worked very hard to collaborate with City Council, and I really want to thank you guys for that, because let's see what this process takes us and hopefully we'll find this next step to build houses.
And I'd love to hear from you all what you need to feel a stronger sense of collaboration. You know, that was one of council's goals this year, was to really work on this partnership. So I appreciate hearing your feedback, and if you have ideas on how we can be better partners or collaborators, you know, I heard your comment, Angelica, and I take it to heart that, you know, but I don't quite understand, so I'd love to catch up with you sometime out of this meeting, because if it's one particular council member, then I can talk to that one council member. But if if everyone's feeling this way about all of council, that's great information to know too. You know, we have the same kind of goal and to be collaborative partners and to see this move forward. So if you're sensing there's certain things that are really not working for you and not jiving, please tell us exactly like those specifics. I don't, like general stuff isn't super helpful. We know that there's tension. How do we, like what is that about? And maybe it just takes a smaller group to kind of sit down and roll up our sleeves and work together.
I think the smaller group, I think that first session we had was, I don't want to say a total waste of time, but it was not well, I can say it. It was not well facilitated. It was poorly organized, a whole bunch of bad things. So I do believe there has to be some subset of this organization, a subset of the city.
Yeah, I have no idea what the purpose of that meeting was.
And I want to say that, like, there are certain council members, and it might just be, you know, that are so collaborative, work so hard with like you, Gail, Amy, I mean, there are certain core group that works very hard to try to put a solution forward. And there are others that might be more focused on the negative. So I think you're right, but I think Kathy, we need to get Conway.
Yeah, we do.
Go, I didn't mean to solve this today. I just.
Okay, so we will put this on next month's agenda as a continuing discussion.
Kathy, do you want a member to volunteer to go to that?
We already have.
Thank you.
Great. If that's all right, Patrick approved that. We asked him the other day.
We've asked.
Yay.
And we'll send some kind of follow-up regarding that subcommittee meeting.
Yeah. And if like Steve, if a city council person can participate at the table, then I think.
I wasn't volunteering.
Well, he asked me to participate. I just didn't walk over. He
That's
just
what I'm
said,
saying, he did
Yeah.
and he did.
I know, and you don't understand what the process really is.
All right, so this next part is very important. And I am going to ask for an executive session, but before I do, I'm gonna remind everybody that some of the information that we're gonna discuss this really needs to stay in this room. We believe that we have an opportunity, and we'll discuss that, but that opportunity could go away if it leaks from this room, because we are not done finalizing. So I will.
Can I ask Kathy if this negotiation pertains to the STR request? Because if so, I would prefer to recuse myself, but I'd like to stay in the discussion if it's more about
The STR might come up as a question, but it is not about the STR money.
Okay.
Please.
Yes.
I think it's important for both, or all of our positions to stay within the alternate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I am going to read the executive session that will be held in compliance with Colorado Revised Statute 246424E, determining positions relative to matters of negotiation, developing strategy, and instructing negotiators. The specific topic is Mid-Valley Partnership. So do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Jess and a second by Lou. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are in executive session. Do you need a minute to